We're going to be starting out in Jeremiah 29, so if you want to go ahead and turn there. While you're turning there, God has been speaking to me and teaching me and working in me and through me this specific word as he launched me into the Ramp School of Ministry, and that word is hunger. And what God has been teaching me about hunger is that it is the key to the more of God. And we have to have that more of God if we're going to see him transform us, if we're going to see him transform this city, and if we're going to see him transform this region. Amen? So in Jeremiah 29, verse 13, it says, "And you will seek me and find me when you search for me with all your heart." So we see here that God is looking for someone who will seek him wholeheartedly. That he promises here in this verse that we will find him, but only if our entire heart is seeking after him. And hunger is that thing inside of us that sparks that wholehearted seeking that God is looking for. In Psalm 84, verse 2, this is a perfect picture of what real hunger looks like. And it says, "My soul longs, yes, even faints, for the courts of the Lord. My heart and my flesh cry out for the living God." And this is a very well-known verse. This is a very well-known psalm. I'm sure every single one of us has either heard it before or heard it preached before or even sang it in like a Matt Gilman song or something like that. But as the Lord started teaching me about hunger, he began to draw this certain word out of this verse that I had kind of just skimmed over before. And that word is faints. And so the psalmist here isn't just saying that his soul is longing or desiring to be with God, but that his very soul within him is fainting. And that word fainting is the word picture of when our physical body faints. And our physical body doesn't faint if we're, strong and healthy and well-fed. Our physical body faints whenever we're hungry, whenever we're weak, whenever we're needing nourishment. And God began teaching me about this real and true hunger and how it's not just our soul and our emotions, but it's our very heart inside of us fainting without his presence. An important thing I've learned about this real hunger is that it can't be manufactured. I can't fake hunger until I become hungry. We can't cry out in an altar out of some sort of fleshly desire, but that real hunger has to be stirred within us by God himself. We can't manufacture that hunger. We have to cultivate that hunger whenever God brings it to us. And it's obvious to me that every single person in this room is hungry for God, because you would not be here on the Friday night after New Year's, if you weren't hungry for God. So we can rest in knowing that each and every one of us has that hunger inside of us, that thing inside of us that says, God, I have to have you, or my life can't go on. I have to have you, or everything's going to fall apart. And so we can rest in knowing that even though we can't manufacture that hunger, every single one of us can cultivate it. In Proverbs 15:14, it says, "A wise person is hungry for knowledge, while the fool feeds on trash." And that's in the New Living Translation. And I just loved that translation of that verse because it was such a clear distinction. Those who are wise are hungry for the knowledge of God, but those who are foolish feed themselves on trash. And I know that a lot of times we can be tempted by these deceitful lusts that come after us, and they look good and they're subtle and they don't even really look like compromise, but these deceitful lusts are going to dampen that hunger that God is wanting to cultivate inside of us. In Ephesians 4:22, Paul writes about these deceitful lusts, that you put off concerning your former conduct the old man which grows corrupt according to the deceitful lusts. Now, these deceitful lusts don't look like other lusts. They come to you and they're subtle and they're deceptive and they're sneaky and they almost look right, but they're not quite right. And the reason why we're drawn away by those deceitful lusts and we're tempted to feed ourselves on trash is because they're sneaky. It's those subtle things. It's those subtle thoughts of compromise. It's that pernicious way the enemy comes in and tries to convince you that it's okay. And it's not, because it's dampening and it's weakening that hunger that God wants to leave and cultivate inside of us. In 1 Corinthians 6:12, Paul writes about how these deceitful lusts sometimes seem permissible, but that doesn't mean that they're good for us. In 1 Corinthians 6:12, it says, "You say, I am allowed to do anything, but not everything is good for you. And even though I am allowed to do anything, I must not become a slave to anything." So Paul warns the Corinthian church about how even though some things are okay for us to do, it doesn't mean that it's going to help us grow in the Lord. He warns Timothy in 2 Timothy 2:22 about these same deceitful lusts. And he says, "Flee also youthful lusts, but pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace with those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart." And the word there, flee, at the very beginning of the verse, is more literally translated to flee away from in violent terror. So it's not the kind of lust that we say, okay, I see that, I'm just going to take the way of escape whenever it presents itself. No. Immediately, whenever we realize that this is something that's trying to pull us away, we're supposed to violently run in terror from it. So hunger not only requires us to abstain from those pleasures of the flesh, but it requires us to guard it and cultivate it. Hunger will cause us to cry out and to continue to cry out even when it's uncomfortable. We're going to be going to Matthew 15 next. And the woman here in Matthew 15 is an example of someone who allowed her hunger to push her to cry out even when it was uncomfortable. She was not only a Canaanite, she was also a woman, so she was a second-class citizen at best. She had no right to even approach Jesus, let alone ask him for something. Because we have to remember in this time period that the Canaanites and anybody who wasn't an Israelite was a stranger from the covenants of promise, like Paul writes in Ephesians 2. So Matthew 15, starting in verse 21. "And Jesus went away from there and withdrew to the district of Tyre and Sidon. And behold, a Canaanite woman from that region came out and was crying, 'Have mercy on me, O Lord, Son of David. My daughter is severely oppressed by a demon.' But he did not answer her a word. And his disciples came and begged him, saying, 'Send her away, for she is crying out after us.' He answered, 'I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel.' But she came and knelt before him, saying, 'Lord, help me.' And he answered, 'It is not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs.' She said, 'Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the master's table.' Then Jesus answered her, 'O woman, great is your faith. Be it done for you as you desire.' And her daughter was healed instantly." So this picture of this woman is that she was a stranger from the covenants of promise. She had no right to even approach Jesus. So she must have already felt a little embarrassed, right? And so she sees Jesus, and he's walking along the road from Tyre and Sidon, and she begins crying out. And I don't know if you've ever been in like a class or even in a church and like you randomly like blurt something out, and then you're kind of like, "Oh, and then everybody just kind of turns and looks at you." Imagine how uncomfortable this Canaanite woman is, let alone what she's saying. She's saying, "Son of David, have mercy on me. My daughter is severely oppressed by a demon." Who wants to cry that out in the middle of a street? I mean, come on. So hunger has this way of causing us to take off this mask, whatever that mask is, and really bear what's really going on the inside. So this woman not only cries out, but she continues to cry out even when people tell her to shut up. I don't know about you, but if somebody told me to stop crying out, I would probably be quiet. But this woman's hunger was so desperate and so real that she kept crying out. And then Jesus goes on to call her a dog. He straight up called the woman a dog. First of all, I've cried out. They told me to stop talking. Now I'm on the dirt in front of him, and then he calls me a dog. I don't know about you, but I would probably be offended. So this woman is uncomfortable, she's embarrassed, and now she's probably offended. And this woman goes on and agrees with the Lord that she has no right to approach him. And so hunger has a way of making us humble and of saying, God, I know that I don't deserve it, but have mercy on me. This woman received what she desired from Jesus because she was hungry enough and desperate enough to cry out to the Lord. Her hunger not only made her cry out in the first place, but her level of hunger and desperation caused her to continue crying out. We must cultivate a hunger that is stronger than embarrassment, that's stronger from fear of rejection, that's stronger than keeping that mask on. We have to cultivate the kind of hunger that is stronger than our changing emotions and our circumstances. We must never allow our circumstances to determine our hunger, but instead we must resolve to make our hunger change our circumstances. God promises in Matthew 5:6 that if we are hungry, if we hunger and thirst for righteousness, we will be filled. And then in Matthew 15:32, whenever he goes to feed the 5,000, before he performs that miracle, he says, I am unwilling to send them away hungry, lest they faint on the way. And then wrapping up in Psalm 107:9, it says, he has satisfied the one who thirsts, filling the hungry with what is good. And then skipping down to verse 36, it says, and there he makes the hungry to dwell, that they may prepare a city for habitation. He has brought hungry people not only to First Assembly in this room to gather tonight, but he's brought hungry people to this region so that we can prepare this region for him to inhabit it, for him to come and visit, for his glory to rest here. And so he has brought us here because we are hungry. Why is our hunger so important? And why is our daily decision to stay hungry so vital? Because our unwavering daily hunger is sowing seeds into the soil of this region. God is sending the rains of his revival in 2015, but we have to sow seeds out of our hunger. Because when God sends his rain, it will kiss the seeds of our hunger, and we will see a harvest that won't only feed this region, but will feed the entire nation.